The old grand piano sat in the corner of the music room, its dark wood gleaming under the fluorescent lights. For most students at Pine Grove Elementary, it was just another piece of school furniture. But for 10-year-old Sophia Chen, that piano was magic waiting to happen. Sophia wasn't like the other kids in her 5th grade class. While they raced to the playground during lunch breaks, she would slip away to the empty music room. The janitor, Mr. Parker, had noticed her sneaking in but never said anything. There was something about the serious look on her small face that stopped him from sending her back outside. "Just make sure you close the door behind you," he'd told her one day with a wink. That was their secret, an unspoken agreement between a kind-hearted school employee and a little girl with a dream bigger than herself. On this particular Tuesday in October, Sophia sat on the piano bench as usual. Her feet dangled above the floor. She was small for her age, with delicate hands that seemed made for the ivory keys. She placed her fingers on the piano with care, as if touching something precious. Then she closed her eyes and began to play. No sound came out. Sophia wasn't actually playing. She couldn't. No one had ever taught her how. Her family had moved from China when she was just a baby. Her parents worked long hours, her mom at the local grocery store and her dad driving for a rideshare company. Piano lessons were a luxury they couldn't afford, so instead Sophia practiced in silence. She would watch videos on her mom's old tablet, memorizing where the fingers should go, how they should move. At night she'd practice on her desk, pretending the wooden surface was a keyboard. She'd drawn the keys on paper and taped them to the edge. It wasn't the same, but it was all she had. Here in the music room, though, she could at least feel what a real piano was like. The weight of the keys, the smooth coolness of them against her fingertips. Sometimes she would press one very softly, just to hear what a single note sounded like. But mostly she practiced in silence, imagining the music in her head. That day she was so lost in her pretend playing that she didn't notice the time. The bell rang, signaling the end of lunch. Sophia jumped up in surprise, her elbow knocking against the side of the piano. She heard a strange sound, a dull thunk followed by a metallic ping. Something had broken. Heart pounding, she looked under the piano and saw a piece of metal on the floor. One of the pedals hung at an odd angle. Sophia felt sick to her stomach. She picked up the piece, not knowing what to do with it. That's when the door opened. Mrs. Reynolds, the music teacher, stood there with her arms crossed. She was a tall woman with graying hair pulled into a tight bun. Her eyes went from Sophia to the broken pedal, then to the metal piece in the girl's hand. "What are you doing in here?" Mrs. Reynolds asked, her voice sharp. Sophia opened her mouth, but no words came out. She had never been in trouble before. She was always the quiet one, the good student who turned in her homework on time and never disrupted class. I was just," she stammered. Mrs. Reynolds walked over and took the metal piece from Sophia's hand. "Do you have any idea how expensive this piano is? This is the sustain pedal. It's completely broken off." Tears filled Sophia's eyes. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. "It was an accident." "You shouldn't have been in here in the first place," Mrs. Reynolds said. "Come with me. We're going to the principal's office." The walk down the hallway felt like the longest journey of Sophia's life. Students were changing classes, and many of them stopped to stare as the music teacher marched her toward the office. Sophia kept her head down, her cheeks burning with shame. Principal Wilson was on the phone when they arrived. He held up a finger, asking them to wait. Sophia stood there staring at her sneakers, old ones with a hole starting to form near the big toe. Her mom had promised new ones next month when she got her paycheck. "What seems to be the problem?" Principal Wilson asked after hanging up. He was a middle-aged man with kind eyes, but today they looked tired. Mrs. Reynolds explained what had happened, showing him the broken pedal piece. "I found her alone in the music room with this in her hand." "Is this true?" Principal Wilson asked Sophia. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "But I didn't mean to break it. It was an accident. Accident or not, that piano is very valuable," he said with a sigh. "It was donated by an alumni last year. We'll have to call your parents." "Please don't," Sophia begged, knowing how upset they would be. Her father had been talking about bills at dinner just the night before, but Principal Wilson was already dialing the number from her student file. "Hello, Mr. Chen. This is Principal Wilson from Pine Grove Elementary. There's been an incident involving Sophia and the school piano. We need you to come in for a meeting." The next few hours were a blur. Sophia went back to class but couldn't focus on the math problems on the board. Everyone seemed to know what had happened. Lily, who sat next to her, scooted her desk away. Tommy pointed at her during group work and whispered something to his friends. Even Ms. Jones, her homeroom teacher, gave her a disappointed look. By the time the final bell rang, the story had spread throughout the school. Sophia Chen had broken the expensive piano. Sophia Chen was in big trouble. Sophia Chen's parents would have to pay thousands of dollars. Her mother arrived at 3:30, still wearing her grocery store uniform. Her father couldn't come. He couldn't afford to miss any rides. Sophia sat outside the principal's office while the adults talked inside. She could hear their voices rising and falling, her mother's English becoming more broken when she got upset. "We don't have that kind of money," her mother was saying. "We can pay little by little, maybe?" When they finally came out, her mother's eyes were red. Principal Wilson explained that the piano would need to be assessed by a professional repair person. Until then, they wouldn't know the exact cost. "We'll need to discuss this at the next PTA meeting," he said. "The piano is used for school concerts and events. It needs to be fixed before the winter program next month." The ride home was silent. Sophia wanted to explain about her secret practice sessions, about how she'd been teaching herself to play without making a sound. But the words stuck in her throat. Her mother already looked so worried. At dinner that night, her parents spoke in hushed Chinese, occasionally glancing her way. Sophia pushed her food around her plate, not hungry. "Why were you in the music room alone?" her father finally asked. He wasn't angry, just confused. His daughter had always been so well behaved. "I like the piano," Sophia said softly. "I go there during lunch. To play?" her mother asked, surprised. "Who taught you?" Sophia shook her head. "I don't play. I just pretend." Her parents exchanged looks, not understanding. How could she explain the music she heard in her head? How could she tell them about her dream to make those beautiful sounds for real? The next day at school was even worse. The story had grown overnight. Now kids were saying she had been jumping on the piano. Others claimed she'd been trying to carve her name into it. "Piano breaker," someone whispered as she walked to her desk. Her cheeks burned, but she kept her eyes forward. At lunch, no one wanted to sit with her. Sophia took her sandwich to the library instead. The librarian, Mrs. Diaz, smiled at her but didn't ask questions. Sophia found a corner behind the biography section and ate alone. The music room was now off limits. A sign on the door read, "No students allowed without teacher supervision." Sophia walked past it slowly, peering through the small window at the piano in the corner. It looked the same, except for the broken pedal hanging sadly. That afternoon, an email went out to all parents about a special meeting to discuss the piano incident. Sophia's homeroom teacher printed it out and put it in her backpack, not meeting her eyes. By Friday, Sophia had become the school outcast. The kids who had never noticed her before now avoided her like she carried some terrible disease. Teachers who had once smiled at her in the hallways now gave her concerned looks, as if wondering what had made such a quiet student do something so destructive. No one asked for her side of the story. No one seemed to care that it had been an accident. In their eyes, she was guilty. The girl who broke the expensive piano. The girl whose parents couldn't afford to fix it. The girl who had created a problem for everyone. That night, Sophia lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The piano piece she had been imagining during her silent practice sessions played in her head. Her fingers moved slightly under the covers, following the notes only she could hear. Tomorrow was the special meeting. All the parents would be there, along with the teachers and principal. They would talk about the piano, about how much it would cost to repair, about what should happen to the student responsible. Sophia closed her eyes and made a decision. She would have to be brave. She would have to show them who she really was. Even if no one believed her now, soon they would understand. She wasn't the girl who broke the piano. She was the girl who could make it sing. The Saturday morning of the special meeting dawned gray and rainy. Sophia stood at her bedroom window watching water trickle down the glass. Her mother had ironed her best blue dress, the one usually saved for special occasions. Today wasn't a celebration, but it felt important to look proper. "Ready?" her father asked from the doorway. He rarely missed work, but today he had turned down several ride requests. Family came first, he always said, especially in times of trouble. Sophia nodded, though her stomach felt like it was tied in knots. She hadn't slept much. Instead, she'd spent hours watching piano tutorials on her mom's tablet. The volume turned so low she had to hold it close to her ear to hear anything. "Whatever happens," her mother said as they got into their old car, "we're proud of you." But Sophia could see the worry lines between her eyebrows. Money was already tight. An expensive piano repair would mean no new winter coats, maybe even cutting back on groceries. The school parking lot was nearly full when they arrived. Parents huddled under umbrellas, hurrying toward the main entrance. Inside the gymnasium, rows of folding chairs faced a small stage, where Principal Wilson stood with Mrs. Reynolds and several adults Sophia didn't recognize. "Those are PTA members," her father whispered as they found seats near the back. "And the man in the suit must be the piano repair person." Sophia felt eyes on her as they settled in. Parents turned to stare, some whispering behind their hands. A few kids from her class were there too, sitting with their families. Lily caught her eye, then quickly looked away. Principal Wilson tapped the microphone. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," he began. "As you know, our school's grand piano was damaged earlier this week. Mr. Hoffman from Classic Piano Restoration is here to give us his assessment." The man in the suit stepped forward. He had white hair and glasses that kept sliding down his nose. "I examined the piano yesterday afternoon," he said. "The damage to the sustain pedal is significant. The internal mechanism was also affected when the pedal broke off." He showed some pictures on the screen behind him, close-ups of metal parts and wooden components that meant nothing to Sophia. But the next slide made a murmur run through the crowd. It showed a repair estimate. $2,150. Sophia heard her mother's sharp intake of breath. That was more than 2 months' rent. "The piano was donated by a generous alumni," Mrs. Reynolds explained. "It's a valuable instrument essential for our music program and the upcoming winter concert." Principal Wilson cleared his throat. "We're here to discuss how to handle this situation. As you know, the damage was caused by a student who was in the music room without permission." All eyes turned toward Sophia. Her face grew hot and she stared down at her hands. "I believe the family should be responsible for the full amount," said a woman in the front row. "Children need to learn that actions have consequences." "That seems harsh," countered another parent. "It was an accident, wasn't it?" "Accident or not," Mrs. Reynolds said, "the music room is off limits during lunch unless a teacher is present." Rules were broken. The discussion went back and forth. Some parents suggested a payment plan. Others recommended a fundraiser. A few thought the school's insurance should cover it. Sophia's parents sat quietly, their faces growing more tense with each comment. Finally, her father stood up. The room fell silent. "My daughter made a mistake," he said, his accent thicker than usual, as it always was when he was nervous. "We will take responsibility. But we cannot pay all at once. We will need time." Principal Wilson nodded. "We understand, Mr. Chen. Perhaps we can—" "May I say something?" The voice was so small that at first no one realized who had spoken. Then heads turned as Sophia stood up beside her father. "Sophia, it's okay," her mother whispered, trying to pull her back down. But Sophia stayed on her feet. "I need to explain," she said, her voice growing a little stronger. Principal Wilson looked surprised but nodded. "Go ahead." Sophia took a deep breath. "I didn't mean to break the piano," she began. "But I wasn't playing it. I don't know how." Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Then what were you doing in the music room?" Mrs. Reynolds asked. This was the hardest part. Sophia felt her cheeks grow hot again, but she continued. "I go there to practice, but I don't make any sound. I just pretend." The confusion in the room deepened. Parents exchanged glances. A few kids snickered. "I watch videos," Sophia explained. "Piano lessons online. I memorize where to put my fingers. But we don't have a piano at home. We can't afford lessons, so I practice silently." The gym grew very quiet. Even the kids who had been whispering stopped. "You practice without making sound?" Principal Wilson asked gently. Sophia nodded. "I've been doing it for almost a year now. I draw keyboards on paper at home. I practice on my desk. And at lunch I go to the music room to feel what a real piano is like." Her mother reached for her hand, squeezing it tight. Sophia hadn't told her parents about this before. "The day it broke, I was startled by the bell. My elbow hit something when I stood up. I didn't mean to break it. I'm really sorry." The man from the piano company, Mr. Hoffman, had been listening with growing interest. He stepped forward. Young lady, are you saying you've never actually played the piano? Not even once? I've pressed single keys sometimes, Sophia admitted, very quietly. But I've never played a song. Mr. Hoffman exchanged looks with Principal Wilson. That's quite remarkable. To have that kind of dedication. A new voice spoke up from the back of the room. I've seen her. Heads turned to see Mr. Parker, the janitor, standing against the wall. I've seen her going into the music room at lunch. I thought it was odd that I never heard any playing. Now I understand why. Why didn't you report her? Mrs. Reynolds asked, frowning. Mr. Parker shrugged. She wasn't causing any trouble. She always left the room exactly as she found it. I figured she just needed a quiet place. Is there anyone who can verify that Sophia has never played the piano? Principal Wilson asked. A small hand went up. It was Lily, Sophia's classmate. I sit next to her in class, she said. She's always drawing piano keys on her notebook and moving her fingers. I asked her once if she takes lessons and she said no. Me too, said another boy from Sophia's class. I've seen her tapping her fingers on her desk during math, like she's practicing something. Slowly the mood in the room began to shift. The angry looks faded, replaced by something else. Curiosity, and maybe even a bit of admiration. Mr. Hoffman turned to Sophia. I've been teaching and repairing pianos for 40 years, he said. And I've never heard of anyone teaching themselves like this. He paused. Would you be willing to show us? Sophia's eyes widened. Show you? Yes, show us how you practice. Her heart raced, but she nodded. The crowd parted as she walked to the small stage. There was no piano there, just a table with a microphone. Mr. Hoffman pulled out a chair for her. Pretend this table is your piano, he said kindly. Show us what you do. Sophia sat down, placing her hands on the edge of the table. For a moment she froze, aware of all the eyes watching her. Then she closed her eyes just as she did in the music room. In her mind she could see the keyboard, could hear the music she'd been practicing for months. Her fingers began to move, pressing invisible keys. They danced across the tabletop in perfect rhythm, sometimes crossing over each other, sometimes stretching to reach imaginary notes. Though no sound came out, anyone watching could see the care in each movement, the precision, the focus. She played for almost 2 minutes, lost in her silent world of music. When she finished, she opened her eyes to find the gymnasium completely quiet. Even the kids who had laughed at her before were watching with open mouths. Mr. Hoffman was the first to speak. That was Beethoven's Für Elise, he said, his voice filled with amazement. And your fingering was almost perfect. Sophia nodded, surprised that he could tell. It's my favorite. I've watched the tutorial 26 times. Mrs. Reynolds stepped forward, looking at Sophia with new eyes. You've memorized the entire piece without ever hearing yourself play it? I hear it in my head, Sophia explained. I know what it's supposed to sound like. The music teacher turned to Principal Wilson. I think we need to reconsider this situation. Principal Wilson nodded slowly. Yes, I believe we do. He addressed the crowd. It seems we've been too quick to judge. While rules were broken, I think we can all agree this is an exceptional circumstance. Mr. Hoffman raised his hand. If I may make a suggestion? My company would be willing to reduce the repair costs significantly, and he looked at Sophia with a kind smile. I'd like to offer this young lady piano lessons, free of charge. A murmur of approval went through the room. Sophia's mother covered her mouth, tears in her eyes. That's very generous, Principal Wilson said. As for the remaining cost, I propose a school fundraiser. All in favor? Hands shot up across the gymnasium. As the meeting continued, Sophia returned to her seat. Her father put his arm around her, pulling her close. Why didn't you tell us? He whispered. I didn't want you to worry about not being able to afford lessons, she answered. Her father's eyes were damp. You are the most amazing daughter, he said, but Sophia wasn't listening anymore. Her mind was racing ahead, filled with a new possibility. Soon, very soon, she would get to hear the music that had lived only in her imagination. Soon, her silent practice would finally have sound. On Monday morning, Sophia walked into school with her head held a little higher. The weekend had been a whirlwind of emotions. Her parents had hugged her countless times, amazed by her secret dedication. Her father had even cleared space in their small living room, saying, For when we get you a keyboard to practice on. The hallways felt different today. Kids who had ignored her last week now stared with curious eyes. A few even smiled. Lily, who had spoken up for her at the meeting, waved her over to sit together on the bus. "Is it true you're getting free piano lessons?" Lily asked. Sophia nodded, still not quite believing it herself. Mr. Hoffman had called on Sunday to arrange her first lesson for Wednesday afternoon. "That's so cool," Lily said. "Maybe you'll be famous one day," Sophia laughed. "I just want to hear what the music sounds like for real." Their first class was math, and Ms. Jones greeted Sophia with a warm smile. "Good morning, Sophia. Nice to see you today." The whispers followed her throughout the morning. "That's her, the piano girl. I heard she memorized Beethoven without ever playing. My mom says she's like a musical genius or something." By lunchtime, Sophia had been asked to demonstrate her silent playing technique 3 times. She felt shy about it, but also a little proud. For once, people were noticing her for something good. After lunch, Principal Wilson's voice came over the loudspeaker. "Sophia Chen, please report to the music room." A chorus of oohs rippled through the classroom. Sophia felt her heart skip a beat. Was she in trouble again? She made her way to the music room, where she found Principal Wilson waiting with Mrs. Reynolds and, surprisingly, Mr. Hoffman. The piano repairman had brought a toolbox and was kneeling beside the grand piano. "There she is," Principal Wilson said with a smile. "Sophia, Mr. Hoffman came by early to start the repairs. He thought you might want to see." Mr. Hoffman looked up from his work. "I'm nearly done, actually. Just making some final adjustments." His hands moved expertly among the internal mechanisms of the piano. "Come take a look, young lady. You should know how this works if you're going to be a pianist." Sophia approached cautiously, peering into the open body of the instrument. It was like looking inside a strange, beautiful machine, strings and hammers and wooden pieces all arranged with perfect precision. "See this?" Mr. Hoffman pointed to a system of levers and wires. "This is what connects the pedal to the dampers. When you press the sustain pedal, it lifts all these dampers at once so the strings can keep vibrating after you release the keys." Sophia nodded, fascinated. "That's what makes the sound keep going?" "Exactly right," he said, impressed. "You've been studying," she smiled. "I watch a lot of videos." Mrs. Reynolds, who had been watching quietly, stepped forward. "Mr. Hoffman tells me you have exceptional promise, Sophia." Sophia looked down, suddenly shy again. "I don't know about that. I've never even played for real." "That's what makes it so remarkable," Mr. Hoffman said, closing his toolbox. "Your dedication shows a natural musician's heart." He stood up, dusting off his hands. "Well, I believe she's ready to sing again." Principal Wilson looked pleased. "The fundraiser is already going well. Several parents have made donations, and the PTA is organizing a bake sale next week." "That's very kind," Sophia said softly, thinking of her parents' relief when they heard they wouldn't have to pay the full amount. Mr. Hoffman adjusted the piano bench and patted it. "Would you like to try her out? See if I've done my job properly?" Sophia froze. "You mean, play now?" Mrs. Reynolds nodded encouragingly. "Just a few notes, perhaps? To test the pedal?" Sophia's heart pounded. This was both her dream and her biggest fear, to finally make the sound she'd been imagining for so long. What if she couldn't do it? What if all her silent practice had been pointless? "I don't know if I can," she whispered. Mr. Hoffman smiled kindly. "Just put your fingers on the keys the way you've practiced. Don't worry about playing a song. Just feel what it's like." Slowly, Sophia sat down on the bench. It was lower than she was used to. Her feet could almost touch the floor now. She placed her hands in position, the way she had done hundreds of times before. But this time, cool ivory keys met her fingertips instead of a wooden tabletop or paper drawing. "Take your time," Mr. Hoffman said quietly. Sophia closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and pressed down gently on a single key. A clear, bright C note rang out in the quiet room. She opened her eyes in wonder. The sound seemed to hang in the air, a living thing she had created with just one finger. She pressed another key, an E, and then a G. The 3 notes blended together in perfect harmony. "That's a C major chord," Mrs. Reynolds said softly. "Beautiful." Encouraged, Sophia tried a simple 5-note scale, the first one she had memorized from her videos. Her fingers moved tentatively at first, then with growing confidence. Each note was a revelation. "So this is what that sounds like, and this, and this." "Try the pedal," Mr. Hoffman suggested. Just press it down with your right foot while playing." Sophia stretched her small foot to the brass pedal and pressed down while playing another chord. The notes seemed to bloom and linger, filling the room with their resonance. A smile spread across her face, the first real, unguarded smile any of them had seen from her. It's even better than I imagined," she breathed. Principal Wilson cleared his throat, clearly moved. "I think we should let Sophia have some time alone with the piano. She's waited long enough for this moment." Mrs. Reynolds nodded. 20 minutes until your next class, Sophia. Consider this your first official practice session." The adults moved towards the door, but Mr. Hoffman turned back. "Remember, your first real lesson is Wednesday. Just enjoy exploring for now." When they left, closing the door behind them, Sophia sat very still for a moment, hardly believing she was alone with the piano, allowed to be there, allowed to play. Then, slowly, she began to try the piece she knew best. For Elise. Her fingers remembered the patterns, but now each movement produced actual sound. It was halting at first, with wrong notes and uneven timing. Without the pedal in her silent practice, she hadn't realized when to use it and when not to. Some parts were much harder than she'd expected, while others came naturally. It wasn't perfect, far from it. But it was music. Real music flowing from her fingers for the very first time. Outside in the hallway, a small crowd had gathered. Word had spread quickly, and students pressed their ears to the door, listening to the stumbling but determined notes of Beethoven coming from within. Teachers who were passing by stopped to listen as well. "Is that really Sophia Chen playing?" one student whispered. Mr. Parker, the janitor, smiled as he mopped nearby. "Sure is. Been waiting a long time to hear that." Inside, Sophia was lost in her own world. Each mistake taught her something new. Each correct passage filled her with joy. By the time the 20 minutes were nearly up, she had worked out the first page of music with reasonable accuracy. When Mrs. Reynolds returned to tell her it was time for class, she found Sophia with tears streaming down her face. "Are you all right?" she asked, concerned. Sophia nodded, wiping her cheeks. "I'm just happy. I never knew it could sound so beautiful." Mrs. Reynolds sat down beside her on the bench. "You know, in all my years of teaching, I've never seen anyone with your kind of determination. Most children want instant gratification. You practiced for a year without hearing a single note." "I just wanted it so badly," Sophia said simply. "That's the secret to mastering anything worthwhile," Mrs. Reynolds said. "Now you'd better get to science class, but—" She hesitated, then reached into her pocket. "I made you this." She handed Sophia a small key on a purple lanyard. "This is a copy of the music room key. You can come in before school during lunch or stay after until 4:30. Mr. Parker has agreed to lock up after you leave." Sophia stared at the key in disbelief. "Really? I can come any time?" Mrs. Reynolds nodded. "You've more than earned it." She paused. "And Sophia, I owe you an apology. I jumped to conclusions without giving you a chance to explain." "I'm very sorry about that. It's okay," Sophia said. "I should have asked permission to use the piano in the first place." "Well, now you have it," Mrs. Reynolds smiled. "Officially." As Sophia walked to her science class, she clutched the key tightly. The cool metal in her palm was proof that everything had changed. Just 1 week ago, she had been the girl who broke the piano, an outcast blamed for something she didn't fully understand. Now, she was the girl with the key to the music room, the girl who could finally play. The girl whose silent dream had found its voice. The next 2 months flew by in a whirlwind of piano keys and new melodies. Sophia arrived at school an hour early each morning, her small fingers already warmed up from practicing finger exercises on the bus ride. The music room became her second home, a place where mistakes were allowed, where she could stumble through difficult passages again and again until they finally clicked. Mr. Hoffman came every Wednesday for her lessons. He was patient but demanding, often making her play the same measure 10 times in a row until it sounded right. "You have a gift," he told her during their 3rd lesson, "but gifts need nurturing." "That means hard work," Sophia nodded seriously. Hard work didn't scare her. After all, she had practiced silently for a year without ever hearing a note. Now that she could actually play, the hours flew by like minutes. At home, things had changed too. The fundraiser had been more successful than anyone expected. Not only had they raised enough money to cover the piano repairs, but there was extra to buy a keyboard for Sophia to practice on at home. The day they set it up in their living room, Her father had taken a rare day off work. He watched with tears in his eyes as Sophia showed him what she had learned. "My daughter, the pianist," he said proudly, taking a video on his phone to send to relatives back in China. Her mother hung Sophia's first sheet music, for Elise, on the refrigerator door, right next to her math test with a big red A. "Two kinds of brilliance," she said, tapping Sophia's forehead affectionately. Even at school, things were different. Kids who had never spoken to her before now stopped by the music room to listen. Lily had become a regular visitor during lunch breaks, often bringing her sandwich to eat while Sophia practiced. "You're getting really good," Lily said one day, after Sophia had played through a simple Mozart piece. "Are you nervous about the winter concert?" Sophia's hands froze above the keys. The winter concert was just 2 weeks away, and Mrs. Reynolds had asked her to perform. It would be her first time playing in front of the whole school and all the parents. Terrified, she admitted. "You'll be amazing," Lily assured her. "Everyone's talking about it." That was exactly what worried Sophia. The story of the girl who taught herself piano without ever playing had spread beyond the school. A local newspaper had even sent a reporter to interview her and take photos of her practicing. Principal Wilson said the winter concert would have twice as many attendees as usual because of the buzz. What if she froze up? What if she made terrible mistakes? What if everyone realized she wasn't actually special, just a regular kid who had practiced in a strange way? These fears followed her through the days leading up to the concert. She practiced her piece, a simplified arrangement of Debussy's Clair de Lune, until her fingers ached. Mr. Hoffman had suggested it, saying the dreamy, gentle melody would suit her thoughtful playing style. "Remember," he told her during their final lesson before the concert, "music isn't about playing every note perfectly. It's about making people feel something." Sophia nodded, but inside she wasn't convinced. She wanted every note to be perfect. The night before the concert, she could barely sleep. She kept going over the music in her mind, imagining her fingers on the keys. What if she forgot everything the moment she sat down at the piano? Morning came too quickly. Her mother had bought her a new dress for the occasion, dark blue with tiny silver stars that sparkled when she moved. "Like the night sky," her mother said, as she helped Sophia with her hair. "Perfect for Clair de Lune, that means moonlight, you know." "I know," Sophia said, her stomach too knotty with nerves to manage more words. When they arrived at school, the parking lot was already filling up. Parents carried bouquets of flowers for their children. A local TV van was parked near the entrance. "They're here for the 5th grade band and the choir," her father said, noticing her wide eyes. "Not just for you?" "Don't worry." But as they entered the auditorium, several people pointed and whispered, "That's her, the piano girl." Backstage was chaos. The kindergarten class was rehearsing their song about snowflakes. The 4th grade recorder group warmed up with shrill, piercing notes. Older kids from the band tuned their instruments. Mrs. Reynolds found Sophia sitting alone in a corner, hands pressed between her knees to keep them from shaking. "There you are," she said warmly. "I saved you a spot to practice." She led Sophia to a small room off the main stage area where an upright piano waited. "Take your time. You're scheduled after the 3rd grade chorus about halfway through the program." Sophia nodded gratefully and sat down at the piano. As her fingers touched the keys, some of her anxiety melted away. She played through her piece once, then again, focusing on the trouble spots. From the auditorium, she could hear muffled applause as the concert began. Principal Wilson's voice welcomed everyone. Then came the kindergartners, the 1st grade rhythm band, and one by one the other groups. All too soon, Mrs. Reynolds appeared at the door. 5 minutes, Sophia." Her heart raced as she followed the music teacher to the wings of the stage. The 3rd grade chorus was just finishing their final song. Mrs. Reynolds squeezed her shoulder. "You'll be wonderful." Principal Wilson's voice boomed through the microphone again. "Next, we have a very special performance. Many of you have heard about Sophia Chen, our 5th grade pianist with an extraordinary story." Sophia peeked around the curtain. The auditorium was packed, every seat filled with people standing along the back wall. Her parents sat in the 3rd row, her mother clutching a small bouquet, her father holding his phone, ready to record. Sophia taught herself to play piano without ever touching a real piano. Principal Wilson continued. She practiced in silence for over a year before she ever heard the notes she was playing. "Tonight she'll perform Debussy's Clair de Lune. Please welcome Sophia Chen." The applause washed over her as she walked carefully to the grand piano center stage. It had been polished to a high shine for the concert, its lid raised to let the sound fill the room. This was not the same as practicing alone in the music room. This was real, hundreds of eyes watching her every move. Sophia sat down on the bench, adjusted it slightly, and placed her hands in position. The audience fell silent, waiting, but her fingers wouldn't move. Her mind went completely blank. The notes she had memorized so carefully vanished from her memory. 10 seconds passed. 20. She could hear whispers starting in the audience. Panic rose in her chest. She looked out desperately, finding her parents' faces in the crowd. Her father gave her an encouraging nod. Her mother mouthed, "You can do it." Sophia closed her eyes, just as she had done during all those months of silent practice. She took a deep breath and let her fingers find the keys by memory. The first notes were hesitant, softer than she'd intended. But as the familiar melody began to take shape, something strange happened. The nervousness faded, replaced by the simple joy of making music. This was why she had worked so hard, not for the applause or attention, but for this feeling of bringing something beautiful into the world. The gentle, rippling patterns of Debussy's masterpiece flowed from her fingers. She made a few small mistakes, played a wrong note here and there, but kept going, her confidence growing with each phrase. The music seemed to lift her away from the stage, away from the watching eyes, into a world where only the sound mattered. When she reached the climax of the piece, her hands moved with newfound strength and certainty. The final delicate notes hung in the air like the last stars before dawn. For a moment after she finished, the auditorium was completely silent. Then came a roar of applause that made her jump. People were standing, clapping with genuine emotion on their faces. Her mother was wiping away tears. Lily, sitting with her family, was bouncing up and down in her seat. Sophia stood shakily and gave a small bow, the way Mr. Hoffman had taught her. The applause grew even louder. Principal Wilson came to the microphone, his voice thick with emotion. "Ladies and gentlemen, Sophia Chen." As she walked off stage on wobbling legs, Mrs. Reynolds was waiting in the wings. The music teacher pulled her into a tight hug. "That was beautiful, Sophia. Absolutely beautiful." Mr. Hoffman appeared beside them, his eyes shining. "What did I tell you? Not about perfection, about making people feel something." Sophia nodded, still dazed by what had happened. "I made some mistakes," she said. "And no one cared," he replied with a smile. "That's the magic of music. When it comes from the heart, the audience feels it." After the concert, people lined up to congratulate her. The local newspaper photographer took more pictures. The TV reporter asked for a quick interview. Through it all, Sophia kept looking for her parents. When she finally spotted them waiting patiently at the edge of the crowd, she ran to them, throwing herself into their arms. "We are so proud," her father whispered, holding her tight. "So very proud." Her mother handed her the small bouquet of white daisies and pink carnations. "For you, our little pianist." Sophia buried her face in the flowers, breathing in their sweet scent. 6 months ago, she had been invisible, just another quiet student no one noticed. 3 months ago, she had been the girl who broke the piano, the one everyone blamed. Tonight, she was a musician. 3 years passed like notes in a fast melody. Sophia, now 13, sat at the grand piano on the stage of the city's Performing Arts Center. Her fingers, longer and stronger now, moved confidently across the keys as she played the final piece in her first real recital. This wasn't a school concert anymore. This was her own showcase, the culmination of 3 years of lessons with Mr. Hoffman and countless hours of practice. The audience was smaller than at that first winter concert, but more focused, mostly music lovers and parents of other young musicians in the community music school where Sophia now took advanced lessons. As she played the final chords of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, she allowed herself a small smile. 3 years ago, she would have found this piece impossible. Now it flowed from her fingers like water. The applause was warm and appreciative. Sophia stood and bowed just as she had practiced. Her gaze found her parents in the front row, beaming with pride. Beside them sat Mr. Parker, the school janitor who had first allowed her into the music room. He had become something of an honorary grandfather over the years, never missing a performance. Mrs. Reynolds was there too, along with Principal Wilson and several teachers from Pine Grove Elementary. Even though Sophia was in middle school now, they had stayed connected, following her progress with genuine interest. After the recital, as people gathered in the lobby for punch and cookies, Sophia found herself surrounded by well-wishers. A woman in a tailored suit approached, hand extended. "Sophia Chen, I'm Ms. Winters from the Westridge Academy of Music. That was quite impressive for someone your age." Sophia shook her hand politely. "Thank you." "We have a junior program for exceptional young musicians," Ms. Winters continued, handing her a glossy brochure. "Full scholarships available for qualified students. I think you should apply." Sophia's eyes widened as she looked at the brochure. Westridge Academy was the most prestigious music school in the state. Many of its graduates went on to Juilliard or other famous conservatories. Mr. Hoffman appeared at her side, having overheard the conversation. "Sophia would be a wonderful candidate," he said. "Her progress has been remarkable." Ms. Winters smiled. "We've heard about the piano girl who taught herself to play without making a sound. I was curious to see if the reality matched the story. I'm pleased to say it does." She turned back to Sophia. "Applications are due next month. I hope we'll be seeing you at auditions." As she walked away, Sophia clutched the brochure tightly. A full scholarship to Westridge would mean access to the best teachers, master classes with famous pianists, opportunities she had never dreamed possible. Her parents joined her, eyes questioning. "She wants me to apply to Westridge Academy," Sophia explained, showing them the brochure. Her mother's expression was a mixture of pride and worry. "Isn't that very competitive?" Mr. Hoffman nodded. "Extremely. But Sophia has something special. Not just talent, determination. That's rarer than people think." Later that evening, after the excitement of the recital had faded, Sophia sat in her room looking at the Westridge brochure. The photos showed students in formal attire performing in beautiful concert halls, much grander than the community center where she had played today. Could she really belong in a place like that? 3 years ago, she had been practicing on paper keyboards. Now she was considering one of the best music schools in the country. It seemed impossible. A gentle knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. Her father entered, carrying a small box wrapped in blue paper. "A gift," he said, sitting beside her on the bed. "For your first real recital." Sophia unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a delicate silver necklace with a tiny piano charm. "It's beautiful," she whispered, touching the charm with her fingertip. "Your mother and I have been saving for it," he said. "We are so proud of how far you've come." Sophia leaned against her father's shoulder. "I'm thinking about applying to Westridge." He nodded. "Mr. Hoffman called us last week. He said you were ready for something like this. We wanted it to be your decision." "What if I'm not good enough?" she asked, voicing her deepest fear. Her father was quiet for a moment. "Do you remember when you broke the piano pedal?" Sophia smiled. "How could I forget? It was the most horrible day of my life, and now it seems like the best thing that could have happened," she admitted. "If I hadn't broken it, no one would have discovered that I was teaching myself to play." "Life is strange that way," her father said. "What looks like disaster can become opportunity." He picked up the Westridge brochure. "Maybe this is your next opportunity." The next month was a blur of preparation. Mr. Hoffman added extra lessons, helping her prepare the required audition pieces. She practiced until her fingers ached, then practiced some more. She recorded herself playing, listening critically for mistakes, then went back to fix them. The night before the audition, she couldn't sleep. What if all this work wasn't enough? What if the other applicants had been playing since they were 3 years old, with private teachers and expensive lessons? She crept downstairs to their living room where her keyboard sat. It wasn't the basic model they had started with anymore. After her first year of lessons, when it became clear that her interest wasn't fading, they had invested in a better instrument, still not as good as a real piano, but close enough for serious practice. Sophia put on headphones so she wouldn't wake her parents and played softly in the dark, letting the familiar movements calm her nerves. The next morning, her mother took the day off work to drive her to Westridge Academy. The campus was even more impressive than the pictures, a cluster of stately brick buildings surrounded by carefully tended gardens. The music building had a separate entrance with a statue of Bach beside the door. Inside, other young musicians waited with their parents, some calmly reviewing sheet music, others nervously pacing. Sophia recognized a few faces from community competitions. They all looked so confident, so at home in this world of classical music. Chen Sophia, a woman with a clipboard, called her name. "You're next. Practice room 3 for warm-up, then to the recital hall in 15 minutes. The practice room was small but well-equipped, with an upright piano that had been recently tuned. Sophia ran through a few scales to warm up her fingers, then touched the piano charm on her necklace for luck. The recital hall was intimidating, much larger than she had expected, with at least 100 empty seats facing the stage. At the center stood a magnificent grand piano, its lid fully open. 3 people sat at a table in the front row, including Ms. Winters from the recital, and 2 older judges she didn't recognize. "Sophia Chen?" one of the judges asked, consulting his notes. "It says here you've been playing for just over 3 years?" She nodded, suddenly unable to find her voice. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Most applicants have been studying for at least twice that long. What makes you think you're ready for Westridge?" Sophia swallowed hard. "I may not have been playing as long," she said carefully, "but I think about music all the time. Even when I couldn't actually play, I was practicing in my mind, feeling what the music should be like." Ms. Winters leaned forward. "Tell us about that period, when you were learning without sound." Sophia took a deep breath and shared her story. The silent practice sessions, the paper keyboards, the broken pedal that had changed everything. As she spoke, she could see the judge's expressions softening. "Well," said the third judge when she finished, "that's certainly unusual. But we're here to evaluate your playing, not your story. Whenever you're ready." Sophia approached the piano, adjusted the bench, and positioned her hands. For a moment, she was transported back to that winter concert 3 years ago, when she had frozen with fear on stage. But she wasn't that same nervous girl anymore. She began with Bach, the precise mathematical patterns flowing from her fingers with clarity and purpose. Then came Chopin, more emotional and expressive. Finally, her own arrangement of Clair de Lune, the piece from her very first performance, now transformed by her deeper understanding of music. When she finished, there was a moment of silence. The judges wrote notes without speaking, their faces unreadable. Finally, Ms. Winters looked up. "Thank you, Sophia. You'll receive our decision in 2 weeks." The wait was agonizing. Sophia tried to focus on school and her regular practice routine, but her mind kept returning to the audition. Had she played well enough? Had she made mistakes she hadn't noticed? 2 weeks later to the day, a thick envelope arrived in the mail. Sophia's hands trembled as she opened it. "Dear Miss Chen," she read aloud to her waiting parents, "we are pleased to offer you a full scholarship to the Westridge Academy Junior program, beginning this fall." Her mother burst into happy tears. Her father hugged her so tightly she could hardly breathe. They called Mr. Hoffman immediately, then Mrs. Reynolds, sharing the good news. That evening, after the excitement had settled a bit, Sophia sat at her keyboard, thinking about the journey ahead. Westridge would be challenging. She would be surrounded by talented musicians, pushed to grow in ways she couldn't yet imagine, but she was ready. After all, she was the girl who had practiced for a year without making a sound. The girl they had accused of breaking the piano. The girl who had turned an accident into an opportunity. She placed her fingers on the keys and began to play, not for an audience or for judges, but for herself. For the pure joy of making music, of turning silence into sound, of creating something beautiful that hadn't existed before. The melody rose and fell, filling the small room with its message of persistence, courage, and unexpected grace.